If you've clicked on this video, you already know the position I intend to argue. That science fiction doesn't need to be scientifically accurate. Now, an easy way to support that argument would be to say, well, sometimes you need to play fast and loose with reality to create a compelling story. Yeah, nah. The 2013 film Gravity is predominantly scientifically accurate. There's that one moment where George Clooney's character sacrifices himself by unclipping his tether and floating off into space because somehow he maintained all his momentum and was stationary at the end of the aforementioned tether at the same time. But other than that, the scientific inaccuracies in Gravity are absolutely tiny and irrelevant. Like Sandra Bullock's hair going straight down in microgravity and her tears floating off instead of staying stuck to her face. So you can write a science fiction story that's both compelling and accurate. That begs the question, why wouldn't you? To answer that, let's stick with Gravity. The premise of the film is that Dr. Ryan Stone, played by Sandra Bullock, is trapped in low Earth orbit during a Kessler event accidentally caused by the Russians. A Kessler event is a theoretical situation in which a small amount of space debris, even as little as one piece, can cause a chain reaction that destroys every satellite in the same orbit. This is possible because a satellite hit by one piece of debris can break into 10 more pieces of debris, which hit 10 more satellites, which each break into 10 more pieces of debris. You can see how fast the debris field grows. So, Gravity drops an astronaut in the middle of a Kessler event and speculates on what might happen. There it is. Gravity is a film that speculates. Why? Because science fiction is a genre that speculates. Just like fantasy, horror, dystopian, and every other genre of speculative fiction, science fiction creates a setting, situation, system, or technology, drops some characters in, and speculates on what might happen next. This formula actually makes science fiction an inherently political genre. Don't believe me? Let's take a walk through the history of science fiction. Well, modern science fiction anyway. If we wanted the entire history of science fiction, we'd have to go all the way back to the Epic of Gilgamesh, which speculates on apocalyptic natural disasters and medicinal herbs that grant immortality, which were absolutely at the forefront of academia at the time, understanding of weather and understanding of medicinal herbs. No one wants to trawl through 4,000 years of storytelling just to make a single point, though. So we're going to start in 1818 with Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, a story about a scientist, Victor Frankenstein, who creates life in a lab, and his creation, who he abandons out of guilt, because in his mind it represents his neglect of his family. With no one to raise him, the creature has no concept of morality, and lashes out against his creator by killing Victor's best friend, and then Victor's wife. Shelley speculates on what might happen if a scientist created life in a lab to explore themes of neglect and generational trauma, which are not themselves heavily political issues, but can be used as a basis for a great many political arguments surrounding the care a person owes to anything they create. Now let's jump ahead to 1895, where we see the publication of The Time Machine by H.G. Wells. In my copy of the book, the invention of the time machine and all its associated technobabble, of which there is very little, is finished by page 25. After that, it gets right to the point. Wells extrapolates the widening class divide of his own time to an exaggerated conclusion, in which the Eloi and the Morlocks are two distinct species that have evolved from the aristocracy and the working class respectively. The Eloi lack any sense of curiosity or order, while the Morlocks work tirelessly to maintain the Eloi's quality of life so they can kidnap and eat them on moonless nights, since they have no other food source. The Time Machine uses an exaggerated speculative future to critique the class structure of Victorian England. But what if that wasn't the point? Let's pretend for a moment that Wells doesn't beat you over the head with the message that the Eloi are the rich and the Morlocks are the poor, and this whole dystopia was the fault of greedy Victorian businessmen. Could you still come to the same conclusion and build your own political argument around the novel? Of course you could, because Wells made a choice. Of all the infinite possibilities that his premise held, what if we traveled to the future, Wells chose one. He speculated a future in which humanity diverged into two species. What if instead he wrote about a future where humanity was on the brink of extinction? Then he'd have another choice. How did we get there? What killed everyone? Was it the fumes of industry choking everyone to death? Did everyone become so reliant on machines that when they broke down, no one knew how to fix them or do the work they did? No matter what answer the writer chooses, it makes a statement. This thing has the potential to end the world, their novel shouts to its readers. So naturally, the novel will be used to make political statements about that supposedly world-ending thing. Even if the world-ending thing is something outlandish like aliens, the way the characters respond to the crisis makes a statement. Another writer who made a choice was George Lucas. In 1977, he asked, what if an empire ruled an entire galaxy? He also asked, what if there were space wizards with plasma swords, but that's less important. George Lucas chose to make the Empire the bad guys and the rebels the good guys. In October of 1977, just 2.5 years after the end of the Vietnam War, there was absolutely no way Star Wars wasn't going to be interpreted as an anti-war statement, with the United States projected onto the Empire and Vietnam projected onto the rebels. So what choice was made in Gravity? The cause of the Kessler event. The Russians. As we all know, the Russians is Hollywood speak for generic bad guys. And, well, yeah, fair. So, the bad guys recklessly shot down a non-functioning satellite and polluted space, which knocked out a huge number of important communication satellites in low Earth orbit. Anyone else getting environmentalist vibes? Was an environmental message the intent of Gravity? Probably not. But the fact that reckless pollution caused the Kessler event makes it pretty easy to build an environmental argument around it. It's pretty clear at this point that science fiction isn't about telling scientific stories. No. It's about speculating on science-coded things. Science-coded. Psi-coded? Yeah, I like that. Psi-coded. Psi-coding is a narrative device that links the contexts of the audience and the story by framing speculative elements as evolved versions of things that already exist in the real world. By evolving the real world instead of making up something entirely new, science fiction feels possible. There's a sort of veil of psychodification that transcends ordinary suspension of disbelief, but still leaves the story just distant enough to be enjoyed as escapism. This makes science fiction a uniquely comfortable lens through which we can assess the morality of progress. It's distant enough to mindlessly consume and enjoy, but real enough to start serious conversations. Science fiction is not about scientific accuracy. It's about speculation. So don't go around gatekeeping what people can and can't enjoy on the basis of accuracy. None of that is to say you can't point out scientific inaccuracies in science fiction. Of course you can. If that's how you enjoy stories, who am I to stop you?